Welcome to PL-300, Data Preparation and Power Query. This is a focused 35-question practice session, not a full exam simulation. Work each scenario before the answer is revealed. For every question, use 4 phases. Read the complete scenario and choices. Lock in your answer during the silent countdown. Review the correct answer. Then use the reasoning and exam clue to strengthen transfer. Matching and ordering questions keep every control visible while the solution is resolved. Question 1. A central analytics team publishes governed semantic models in one workspace. Report authors in other workspaces should be able to discover the models that the team endorses and build reports from them without receiving workspace administration rights. Which 2 Power BI capabilities should the analytics team use? Select 2 answers. Answer choices. A. Export each semantic model to a CSV package whenever an author starts a report. B. Promote or certify the governed semantic models so authors can identify endorsed models. C. Make every report author an admin of the workspace that stores the semantic models. D. Require every author to create a personal cloud connection to each semantic model's original data source. E. Grant the report authors build permission on the appropriate semantic models. The correct answers are B. Promote or certify the governed semantic models so authors can identify endorsed models. E. Grant the report authors build permission on the appropriate semantic models. Build permission controls who can create content from a semantic model, while promotion and certification help authors discover models identified as authoritative. Neither capability requires granting workspace admin rights or bypassing the semantic model to reconnect to its source. Exam clue. For cross-workspace semantic model reuse, separate authorization from discoverability. Build permission enables use, while promotion or certification signals which model to use. Question 2. A query reads a file named daily.csv in the operations folder on the D drive and refreshes successfully on its creator's computer. A colleague opens the PBIX file on a computer that has no D drive and receives datasource.notfound. Both users can access the same file in a shared folder. Which change should the colleague make to resolve the import error? Answer choices. A. Change the query's file path to the accessible shared folder location. B. Change every imported column to the any data type. C. Disable column quality in Power Query Editor. D. Replace cell-level errors in the imported table with null. The correct answer is A. Change the query's file path to the accessible shared folder location. Datasource.notfound can occur when a source path is inaccessible or the source has moved. Pointing the query to a location the colleague can access resolves the source-level failure before data is imported. Exam clue. For datasource.notfound, troubleshoot source location, access, and credentials before attempting row or column-level transformations. Question 3. A SQL query imported into Power Query has a text column named payload. Each value is a JSON object, such as 1 with priority set to high and region set to west. You need separate priority and region columns. Proposed solution. Add a custom column whose formula is json.document applied to the payload column, and then expand the resulting record column to select the priority and region fields. Does the solution meet the goal? Answer choices. A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is A. Yes. JSON.document parses JSON text and returns the represented Power Query value. A JSON object becomes a record. Expanding that record column creates a table column for each selected field, so priority and region become separate columns. Exam clue. When JSON is stored inside a text column rather than supplied as a JSON file, parse each value first and then expand the resulting record or list structure. Question 4. A Power BI data flow contains an orders_staging query that reads from a REST endpoint. Orders_current and orders_history are loaded queries that both reference orders_staging. During a cloud refresh, the endpoint log shows multiple requests. The developer expected both referenced queries to reuse one evaluation of orders_staging. Which explanation best accounts for the multiple requests? Select one answer. Answer choices. A. Cloud refresh always materializes a source query once for all references, so the requests must have been generated outside Power Query. B. All referenced queries share one cloud cache, but Power Query deliberately submits every cached request twice when queries run at the same time. C. Each loaded query, and the queries it depends on, can be evaluated independently, and Cloud Refresh uses a separate cache for each query. D. Disabling load for orders_staging prevents its source step from being evaluated, so each referenced query must connect to the endpoint without using orders_staging. The correct answer is C. Each loaded query and the queries it depends on can be evaluated independently, and Cloud Refresh uses a separate cache for each query. A reference preserves a query dependency. It does not guarantee that one materialized result is shared by every dependent query. Microsoft documents that each query and all the queries it depends on can be evaluated independently. In a cloud environment, each query refresh also uses its own separate cache, so multiple reference queries can result in multiple requests to the same data source. Exam clue. Use references to preserve reusable query dependencies, but do not treat a reference as a promise that downstream cloud refreshes share one materialized source result or cache. Question 5. A Power Query preview contains several identifier columns. For each column, an analyst must quickly compare the number of distinct values with the number of values that occur only once. The comparison should appear beneath each column heading so the analyst can spot an identifier that is not actually unique. Which data profiling tool should the analyst enable? Answer choices. A. Column distribution. B. Column quality. C. Query dependencies. D. Column profile. The correct answer is A. Column distribution. Column distribution displays frequency information beneath column headings and exposes both distinct and unique value counts. This lets the analyst compare several identifier columns and detect a column whose values are not all unique. Exam clue. When the decision depends on value frequency, distinct count, or unique count across columns, think column distribution. Use column quality for valid, error, and empty proportions. Question 6. A budget table contains product ID followed by one column for each month, such as January 2026, February 2026, and March 2026. New month columns will be added at the source over time. You need product ID, month, and budget columns after every refresh, including newly added months. Which two actions should you perform? Select two answers. Answer choices. A. Transpose the table before each refresh and use the first row as headers. B. Select product ID and apply unpivot other columns. C. Select the currently available month columns and apply unpivot only selected columns. D. Rename the generated attribute column to month and the generated value column to budget. E. Select product ID and apply pivot column with product ID as the value column. The correct answers are B. Select product ID and apply unpivot other columns. D. Rename the generated attribute column to month and the generated value column to budget. Unpivot other columns keeps the selected product ID column and unpivots every other column. Microsoft documents that new source columns are also picked up and unpivoted on refresh. The operation creates attribute and value columns, which can be renamed month and budget to match the required schema. Exam clue. For a wide table whose measure columns can grow, select the stable identifier columns and use unpivot other columns so future measure columns are included at refresh. Question 7. A product lookup query is used only as the right-side input to a merge in the final products query. Product lookup must not appear as a separate model table, but the merge must continue supplying category attributes to products. Proposed solution. Clear enable load for product lookup and keep enable load selected for products. Does the solution meet the requirements? Answer choices. A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is A. Yes. Disabling load prevents product lookup from becoming its own model table. It can remain a query dependency used by the load-enabled products query, so the merged category attributes can still be included in products. Exam clue. Separate query evaluation dependencies from model output. A helper can feed a final query, even when the helper itself is not load-enabled. Question 8. A Power Query table has country, metric, and amount columns. Metric contains sales or cost, and each country metric combination occurs exactly once. You need one row per country with separate sales and cost columns. Which transformation should you apply? Answer choices. A. Unpivot the metric and amount columns into attribute and value columns. B. Group by country and sum amount without including metric in the grouping. C. Transpose the entire table and promote the first row to headers. D. Pivot the metric column, use amount as the value column, and choose Don't Aggregate. The correct answer is D. Pivot the metric column, use amount as the value column, and choose Don't Aggregate. Pivot turns the unique values in metric into column headers and places values from amount at each country metric intersection. Because every intersection already has one value, Don't Aggregate is appropriate. Exam clue. When values in one column must become new column headers, pivot that column and identify the column that supplies the cell values. Question 9. A sales staging query has one row per sale and contains sale ID, order date, product key, product name, category, quantity, and revenue. Product attributes repeat on many sales rows. You need a star schema with fact sales at the sale grain and a dim product table with one row per product. Which Power Query design should you use? Answer choices. A. Keep product name and category only in fact sales and omit dim product because the attributes are already present. B. Create a reference to sales staging for dim product. Keep product key, product name, and category. Remove duplicates by product key and retain sale level keys and measures in fact sales. C. Group sales staging by product key and sum quantity and revenue. Then use the grouped table as fact sales. D. Create dim product from all sales staging columns without removing repeated product key rows, and relate it to fact sales on product key. The correct answer is B. Create a reference to sales staging for dim product, keep product key, product name, and category, remove duplicates by product key, and retain sale level keys and measures in fact sales. A fact table stores events at a consistent grain with dimension keys and measures, while a dimension describes a business entity and requires a key. Referencing the staging query creates the dimension shaping branch. Keeping product attributes and removing duplicate product key rows yields one product row, while fact sales keeps the sale event grain. Exam clue. Separate repeated descriptive attributes into a one row per entity dimension, and keep event keys and numeric measures in the fact table at a declared consistent grain. Question 10. A sales goal column is numeric, but the source uses -1 when a branch has not submitted a goal. The business has defined 250,000 as the standard goal that must replace every -1. All other sales goal values must remain unchanged. Which Power Query transformation should the analyst use? Answer choices. A. Remove blank rows from the query. B. Replace values in sales goal, replacing -1 with 250,000. C. Replace errors in sales goal with 250,000. D. Fill down sales goal. The correct answer is B. Replace values in sales goal, replacing -1 with 250,000. The unexpected entries containing -1 are ordinary values, not error cells or nulls. Replace values can target that exact value and substitute the business-defined goal without changing other values. Exam clue. Distinguish an unexpected but valid value from an error or null. Use replace values for the former, replace errors for error cells, and fill for null propagation. Question 11. A sales query has one row per sale and includes region code. A regions query has one row per region code and includes region name. You must add region name to sales while retaining every sales row, including rows whose region code has no match. Which Power Query operation should you use? Answer choices. A. Append regions to sales and align the columns by position. B. Merge sales with regions by region code using an inner join, and then expand region name. C. Append sales to regions and then remove duplicate region code values. D. Merge sales with regions by region code using a left outer join, and then expand region name. The correct answer is D. Merge sales with regions by region code using a left outer join and then expand region name. Merge joins two tables on matching column values. With sales as the left table, a left outer join keeps all sales rows and returns matching regions rows. Expanding the merge column adds region name. Exam clue. Use merge to add columns by matching keys. Select the join kind according to which unmatched rows must remain. Question 12. A semantic model will use an operational Azure SQL database that is not stored in OneLake. Report visuals must query the current source data, and policy prohibits importing a copy of the database into the Power BI semantic model. Which storage mode should you choose? Select one answer. Answer choices. A. Import. B. DirectQuery. C. DirectLake. D. Dual. The correct answer is B. DirectQuery. DirectQuery leaves data in the external source and sends queries to that source as users interact with visuals. DirectLake is for supported Fabric data in OneLake, while Import copies data into the semantic model. Exam clue. First, locate the data. Use DirectLake for supported OneLake data. DirectQuery when queries must remain against an external source. And Import when a refreshed in-memory copy is acceptable. Question 13. You are classifying prepared tables before loading a Power BI star schema. Use the target labels Fact Table and Dimension Table. Match each prepared table to its role in the star schema. Requirements. 1. One row per product key with product name, brand, and category. 2. One row per date key with date, month, quarter, and year. 3. One row per sales transaction with date key, product key, quantity, and revenue. 4. One row per daily inventory snapshot with date key, warehouse key, product key, and on-hand quantity. Available targets: A. Dimension table. B. Fact table. The correct matches are: requirement 1 maps to A, dimension table. Requirement 2 maps to A, dimension table. Requirement 3 maps to B, fact table. Requirement 4 maps to B, fact table. Sales transactions and inventory snapshots are observations at declared grains and contain dimension keys plus numeric measures, so they are fact tables. Product and date describe business entities, have one row per key, and provide attributes used for filtering and grouping, so they are dimension tables. Exam clue: ask what one row represents. Descriptive entity members belong in dimensions, while events or observations at a consistent grain belong in facts. Question 14. An accounts dimension contains one row for each company code and account number combination. Account number is reused by different companies, so neither account number nor company code is unique by itself. A transactions fact table contains both columns and many rows for each account. The model needs a one-to-many relationship based on a single column. Which two Power Query actions should you take? Select two answers. Answer choices: A. Create the account key column in transactions from company code and account number using the same deterministic format. B. Relate the account number column in accounts directly to the account number column in transactions. C. Create the account key column in accounts from company code and account number using the same deterministic format, and verify that account key is unique in accounts. D. Add separate index columns to accounts and transactions and relate the two independently generated indexes. The correct answers are: A. Create the account key column in transactions from company code and account number using the same deterministic format. C. Create the account key column in accounts from company code and account number using the same deterministic format. And verify that account key is unique in accounts. A relationship in a Power BI semantic model uses one column from each table. Creating the same composite account key in both queries provides corresponding values, and confirming uniqueness in accounts makes that column suitable for the one side. Exam clue: when the business key has multiple parts, materialize the same deterministic single-column key in both tables, and confirm that it is unique on the dimension side. Question 15. A postal code column contains values such as 02108 and 00501. The values identify delivery areas, are never used in arithmetic, and must retain all leading zeros after refresh. Which Power Query data type should the analyst assign to postal code? Answer choices: A. Decimal number. B. Text. C. Date. D. Whole number. The correct answer is B. Text. Postal codes are identifiers rather than quantities. The text type preserves characters exactly, including leading zeros, and avoids implying arithmetic behavior. Exam clue: a digit-only column is not necessarily numeric. Choose text when digits form an identifier and formatting, such as leading zeros, is meaningful. Question 16. A shipment query has region, shipment ID, units, and carrier columns. For each region, you need a total units value and a nested table containing all original shipment rows so that a later custom calculation can inspect each region's carriers. Which configuration directly creates the required grouped result? Answer choices: A. Group by region and add only a sum on units, then expect the original shipment columns to remain automatically. B. Pivot carrier by using shipment ID as the value column and sum as the aggregation. C. Append a second copy of the shipment query and group the appended result by carrier. D. Group by region and add two operations, sum on units for total units and all rows for shipments. The correct answer is D. Group by region and add two operations, sum on units for total units and all rows for shipments. The group by operation can combine an aggregate such as sum with the all rows operation. All rows outputs the grouped source rows as a table value, so the result can contain both total units and a nested shipments table for every region. Exam clue. If a grouped result must retain the contributing detail rows for later logic, add an all rows operation alongside the required aggregates. Question 17. You have a local JSON file containing nested records and lists. You need to import it into Power BI Desktop and have Power Query apply automatic table detection steps to flatten the JSON before you continue shaping it. Which connector should you select in the Get Data experience? Answer choices: A. Blank query, B. JSON, C. Text/CSV, D. Folder. The correct answer is B. JSON. For a local JSON file, the JSON connector opens the file in Power Query Editor. Power Query's automatic table detection applies transformation steps that flatten JSON records and lists into a table for further shaping. Exam clue. Choose the connector that understands the semi-structured format itself when you want format-aware parsing and automatic flattening. Question 18. A Power Query query currently embeds the development API root URL in its source step. The same query must be switched among development, test, and production without editing the source expression each time. Which design should you implement? Select one answer. Answer choices: A. Duplicate the query 3 times. Hardcode one environment URL in each copy, and disable 2 copies before every refresh. B. Create a text parameter for the API root URL. Reference the parameter in the source step and change the parameter's current value when switching environments. C. Create a numeric what-if parameter in the report and use its generated measure as the API URL. D. Create a calculated column that returns the environment name and keep the development URL literal in the source step. The correct answer is B. Create a text parameter for the API root URL. Reference the parameter in the source step and change the parameter's current value when switching environments. A Power Query parameter can hold a reusable value and be referenced by a transformation, such as the source step. Changing the parameter's current value then changes the value used by the query without requiring the source expression to be rewritten. Exam clue. Use a Power Query parameter when a value used by an M transformation must vary independently of the query logic. Bind the transformation to the parameter, then change its current value. You are halfway through this data preparation workbench. Keep separating source connection decisions from transformation decisions, and test each requirement against the layer where it must be implemented. Question 19. A logistics company has a fabric warehouse whose curated shipment tables contain billions of rows in Delta format in OneLake. The semantic model must provide fast, interactive analysis without copying the entire data volume during each refresh. Newly prepared data should become available through a lightweight synchronization of table metadata rather than a scheduled full data import. Which table storage mode best meets the requirements? Select one answer. Answer choices: A. DirectQuery, B. Dual, C. DirectLake, D. Import. The correct answer is C, DirectLake. DirectLake is designed for large fabric data sources with delta tables in one lake. It loads required data into memory for vertipack processing, and, unlike import mode, refreshes by framing the latest delta table metadata instead of creating a complete imported copy. Those behaviors satisfy both the interactive performance and lightweight synchronization requirements. Exam clue. For fabric delta tables in OneLake, distinguish DirectLake from import by metadata framing versus a full cached copy, and from DirectQuery by vertipack processing versus federated source queries. Question 20. A Power Query query contains numeric revenue and cost columns. You need to create a gross margin column that subtracts cost from revenue by using a custom column. Arrange the actions in the order in which you should perform them. Available actions. A. Confirm that the formula has no syntax error, and then select OK. B. Enter gross margin as the new column name, and enter revenue minus cost as the formula. C. On the Add Column tab, select Custom Column. The correct order is, first, C. On the Add Column tab, select Custom Column. Second, B. Enter gross margin as the new column name and enter revenue minus cost as the formula. Third, A. Confirm that the formula has no syntax error and then select OK. Power Query Editor creates a formula-based column through Add Column, then Custom Column. After opening the dialog, define the column name and M formula. Verify that the syntax indicator shows no error and select OK to add the column. Exam clue. When a required field is derived row by row from existing columns, think Add Column, then Custom Column, then define and validate the M expression. Question 21. A Power Query quality log has exactly one row per completed equipment check. It contains plant, shift, check duration seconds, and completed at columns. You need one row for each plant and shift combination, with average check duration and last completed at columns. Which Power Query configuration should you use? Answer choices. A. Use Group By in advanced mode, group by plant and shift, and add average of check duration seconds and max of completed at aggregations. B. Pivot shift. Use check duration seconds as the values column and select max as the aggregation. C. Unpivot check duration seconds and completed at, and then remove duplicate plant and shift values. D. Group by plant only. Calculate average of check duration seconds and retain completed at without an aggregation. The correct answer is A. Use Group By in advanced mode, group by plant and shift, and add average of check duration seconds and max of completed at aggregations. Group By creates one output row for each unique combination of the grouping columns. Advanced mode permits plant and shift to be used together, and separate average and max operations produce the two requested summaries. Because the source has exactly one row per completed check, the average is calculated over the intended check grain. Exam clue. First, identify the required output grain. Then use every grain-defining field as a grouping column, and assign an explicit aggregate to each summary column. Question 22. A governed semantic model in the finance workspace already contains certified measures, relationships, and row-level security. You must create a Power BI report in a different workspace that uses that governed model without rebuilding its logic or importing a separate copy of the source data. Which connection should you create in Power BI Desktop? Select one answer. Answer choices. A. Create a data flow from the original database and use the data flow as a replacement semantic model. B. Use Get Data, then Power BI Semantic Models, and select the Governed Finance Semantic Model. C. Connect directly to the model's original database and recreate the measures in a new semantic model. D. Export the semantic model's data to CSV files and import the files into the report. The correct answer is B. Use Get Data, then Power BI Semantic Models, and select the Governed Finance Semantic Model. Power B, I can build reports on semantic models in other workspaces. Connecting to the existing Power BI semantic model reuses its governed model, rather than creating another imported model or recreating its logic. Exam clue. When a requirement emphasizes reusing governed measures and relationships, connect to the shared semantic model instead of reconnecting to its underlying source. Question 23. In Power Query, a query named Active Market Codes returns a list of valid text codes from a governed source. A separate sales query must be filtered by a market parameter. When an analyst changes the parameter, the current value chooser must offer codes from active market codes instead of accepting arbitrary text or relying on a manually maintained list. How should you configure the market parameter? Select one answer. Answer choices. A. Set type to text and suggested values to any value, and then type a code into current value. B. Convert the active market codes list query directly to a parameter, and use the resulting list as the sales filter value. C. Set type to text and suggested values to list of values, and manually copy the current codes into the parameter definition. D. Create a text parameter. Set suggested values to query, select active market codes as the list query, choose a current value, and use the parameter as the sales filter step argument. The correct answer is D. Create a text parameter. Set suggested values to query, select active market codes as the list query, choose a current value, and use the parameter as the sales filter step argument. The query setting for suggested values uses the output of a list query to populate the choices available for a parameter's current value. After the market parameter is configured as text and bound to active market codes, it can be used as the argument in the sales filter step. This keeps the governed list separate from the scalar value selected for the filter. Exam clue. Use suggested values set to query when a parameter's scalar current value must be chosen from a list produced by another Power Query query. Question 24. A worksheet groups records visually. In the region column, each region name appears only on the first row of its group, and the rows below it are null until the next region begins. In the comments column, a comment appears only on the final row of each group, and the preceding rows in that group are null. Every row must receive its group's region and comments values. Which two transformations should the analyst apply? Select two answers. Answer choices. A. Fill down the comments column. B. Fill down the region column. C. Fill up the region column. D. Fill up the comments column. E. Remove all rows that contain a null in either column. The correct answers are B. Fill down the region column. D. Fill up the comments column. Fill down carries each region value into subsequent null rows until the next non-null region. Fill up carries each final row comments value upward into preceding null rows until another non-null comment is reached. Exam clue. Choose fill direction from the location of the trusted value. Fill down when it starts a group. Fill up when it ends a group. Question 25. An orders query contains 250,000 rows sorted by order date. Column quality reports that the amount column is 100% valid, but a full refresh later encounters invalid values near the end of the source. The Power Query Editor status bar says that column profiling is based on the top 1,000 rows. What should the analyst do before relying on the profiling results? Answer choices. A. Enable column distribution while leaving the profiling scope unchanged. B. Sort amount in descending order and keep profiling limited to the top 1,000 rows. C. Remove the rows that contain errors before profiling the query. D. Change column profiling to use the entire dataset. The correct answer is D. Change column profiling to use the entire dataset. Power Query profiles the first 1,000 rows by default. Selecting the profiling message in the lower left corner and changing the scope to the entire dataset makes the quality statistics include values beyond that initial sample. Exam clue. If preview statistics disagree with refresh behavior, check whether profiling is based on the top 1,000 rows or the entire dataset. Question 26. 6 semantic models use one personal cloud connection to an Azure SQL database. A newly created payroll model must connect to the same database with a restricted service account. Changing the existing connection's credentials must not affect the other 5 models. What should you do in the Power BI service? Select one answer. Answer choices. A. Change the credentials on the existing personal cloud connection. Refresh the payroll model, and then restore the old credentials. B. Add the restricted account name as a text parameter in the payroll model, while keeping the existing connection binding. C. Create a shareable cloud connection to the database with the restricted credentials, and bind only the payroll model to it. D. Change the privacy level on the existing personal cloud connection from organizational to private. The correct answer is C. Create a shareable cloud connection to the database with the restricted credentials, and bind only the payroll model to it. A personal cloud connection is a single connection object for a given data source, and changing its credentials affects all semantic models that use it. A separate shareable cloud connection can use different credentials and can be bound only to the payroll model. Exam clue. When one model needs different credentials but shares a source with other models, isolate the credential boundary in a separate connection object, rather than repeatedly editing a shared personal connection. Question 27. A Power BI desktop file contains an employees_staging query that standardizes department codes and removes invalid employee rows. You need a manager's query that starts with the result of employees_staging, filters to managers, and automatically uses any shared cleaning steps later added to employees_staging. Which action should you take? Answer choices. A. Merge employees_staging with itself and then add the manager filter to the expanded table. B. Duplicate employees_staging and then add the manager filter to the duplicated query. C. Create a reference to employees_staging and then add the manager filter to the referenced query. D. Append employees_staging to a new blank query and then add the manager filter. The correct answer is C. Create a reference to employees_staging and then add the manager filter to the referenced query. A referenced query is defined from the result of the original query, so managers can add its own filter while continuing to depend on the shared employees_staging logic. This centralizes later shared cleaning changes in the staging query. Exam clue. Choose reference when several outputs should branch from one maintained transformation pipeline. Choose duplicate when you need an independent copy of the current query logic. Question 28. 4 Power BI semantic models connect to the same cloud data source. 2 models must authenticate with a service account, and 2 must authenticate with a restricted account. The connection objects must be reusable by other authorized authors, rather than owned by one individual. Which connection design should you use? select one answer. Answer choices. A. Create two shareable cloud connections to the source, each with the required credentials, and bind the models to the appropriate connection. B. Create one personal cloud connection and change its credentials before each model refresh. C. Create one personal cloud connection for each model and transfer ownership whenever another author needs it. D. Create one shareable cloud connection and store both credential sets in parameters inside each semantic model. The correct answer is A. Create two shareable cloud connections to the source, each with the required credentials, and bind the models to the appropriate connection. Shareable cloud connections support multiple connection objects to the same cloud data source with different credentials or privacy settings, and they can be shared with other users. Binding each semantic model to the connection with the appropriate identity meets both requirements. Exam clue. Choose a shareable cloud connection when several authors or artifacts must reuse a centrally managed connection, especially when the same source needs distinct credential or privacy configurations. Question 29. A base orders query performs shared cleanup. Online orders and wholesale orders are references to base orders and apply channel-specific filters. Only online orders and wholesale orders should appear as tables in the semantic model. How should you configure query loading? Answer choices. A. Leave Enable Load selected for base orders and clear it for online orders and wholesale orders. B. Clear Enable Load for base orders and leave Enable Load selected for online orders and wholesale orders. C. Clear Enable Load for all three queries. D. Leave Enable Load selected for all three queries and hide base orders in the model. The correct answer is B. Clear Enable Load for base orders and leave Enable Load selected for online orders and wholesale orders. Base orders is a staging dependency rather than a required model table, so its load can be disabled. The two referenced output queries remain load-enabled and become the model tables. Exam clue. Disable load for helper or staging queries, but keep load enabled for the final queries that users need in the model. Question 30. A folder import produces three already cleaned queries: sales_north, sales_south, and sales_west. Each query has the columns order ID, order date, and amount, and each row represents a different order. You need a new consolidated sales query containing the rows from all three queries without changing the original queries. What should you do? Answer choices. A. Use append queries as new with sales_north, sales_south, and sales_west. B. Use merge queries as new and join all three queries on order ID. C. Create a reference to sales_north and expand sales_south and sales_west from it. D. Use a left outer merge from sales_north to each of the other queries. The correct answer is A. Use append queries as new with sales_north, sales_south, and sales_west. Append creates one table by adding the contents of multiple tables. Using append queries as new creates consolidated sales while leaving all three source queries unchanged. Exam clue. Use append when tables represent the same kind of records and need to become one taller table. Question 31. A Power Query solution combines a confidential payroll workbook with a public web feed. Security requires the payroll source to be isolated from every other data source during data combination. Proposed solution. Set the payroll workbook's privacy level to organizational and the web feed's privacy level to public. Does the solution meet the requirement? Select yes or no. Answer choices. A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is B, no. The organizational privacy level allows data to be visible to trusted organizational sources. The private privacy level is the setting that isolates a source from other data sources. Therefore, the payroll workbook must be set to private to meet the stated isolation requirement. Exam clue: translate an explicit source isolation requirement to the private privacy level. Organizational is for trusted organizational visibility, not complete isolation. Question 32. A Power Query telemetry query contains 4 columns. Document content stores the byte contents of an attached file. Is active contains only the logical values true and false. Elapsed time is produced by subtracting one timestamp from another. Operator note contains free-form written comments. Match each column to the most appropriate Power Query data type. Use each response at most once. 2 responses will not be used. Requirements: 1. Length of time obtained by subtracting 2 timestamps. 2. Byte contents of an attached file. 3. Free-form written comments. 4. Logical values true and false. Available targets: A. Duration. B. Binary. C. Decimal number. D. Date/time. E. Text. F. True/false. The correct matches are: Requirement 1 maps to A, duration. Requirement 2 maps to B, binary. Requirement 3 maps to E, text. Requirement 4 maps to F, true/false. Binary represents data in a binary format, so it fits file bytes. True/false represents Boolean values. Duration represents a length of time and is the natural result type for elapsed time. Text represents a Unicode character string and fits free-form comments. Exam clue: choose a data type from the value's meaning. Distinguish a point in time from elapsed time, logical state from encoded state, and character content from raw bytes. Question 33. A CSV source originally contained a column named column. The query included a renamed column step that renamed column to date. The source owner has now renamed the CSV header itself to date, and refresh fails because the renamed column step cannot find column. Proposed solution: remove the now redundant renamed column step. Does this resolve the error while retaining the date column? Answer choices: A. Yes. B. No. The correct answer is A. Yes. The source already supplies the required date header. Removing the step that still references the former column header eliminates the missing column reference and leaves date available to later steps. Exam clue: when a step-level error names a missing column, inspect applied steps for a stale direct reference created before the source schema changed. Question 34. A model contains a warehouses dimension and a shipments fact table. Warehouses has 1 row for each warehouse ID. Warehouse name can repeat because different business units reuse names. Shipments contains many rows for each warehouse ID and has a unique shipment ID for each shipment. Which column should form the one-to-many relationship? Answer choices: A. The warehouse ID column in warehouses to the shipment ID column in shipments. B. The warehouse ID column in warehouses to the warehouse ID column in shipments. C. The warehouse name column in warehouses to the warehouse ID column in shipments. D. The warehouse name column in warehouses to the shipment ID column in shipments. The correct answer is B, the warehouse ID column in warehouses to the warehouse ID column in shipments. Warehouse ID uniquely identifies each dimension row, and the same value repeats in the fact table. So it supports a one-to-many relationship from warehouses to shipments. Descriptive names and transaction identifiers do not represent the shared entity key. Exam clue. On the one side, use a stable column with one value per dimension member. On the many side, use the corresponding foreign key values. Before the final question, take a moment to review the patterns you used. Connect to the correct source, profile the data, transform it deliberately, and preserve the model's analytical intent. Question 35. An order lines query contains quantity and unit price. The analyst must add a line amount column calculated as quantity multiplied by unit price. Quantity and unit price must remain in the query for later validation. Which Power Query feature should the analyst use? Answer choices. A. Merge quantity and unit price into one text column. B. Add a custom column with the formula quantity multiplied by unit price. C. Replace values in quantity with values from unit price. D. Pivot the quantity column and use unit price as the value column. The correct answer is B. Add a custom column with the formula quantity multiplied by unit price. A custom column creates a new column from a Power Query M formula and can reference existing columns. The multiplication formula calculates line amount while preserving both source columns. Exam clue. Use a custom column when a new field requires an explicit row-level formula over one or more existing columns. You have completed all 35 questions in this data preparation and Power Query practice session. Review any missed reasoning, then continue to the next PL-300 theme when you are ready.